Let me go across to Professor Prasenjit. Professor Prasenjit, you said something yesterday, it stayed in my mind, moral atonement.
Yes.
Just stayed in my mind. When I went back home, it stayed in my mind, and I thought of the books I read of Gandhi and Noakhali.
Yes, yes, surely. I mean, it requires a lot of effort to really bring people who have been torn apart by such gory acts of violence. So one has to really establish the role of an exemplar of peace, fraternity, love, and brotherhood has to be brought into the frame. What we are talking at cross purposes most of the times, and we are getting polarized. In a difficult situation like Manipur, we need a peacemaker and not just a peace broker. And this is something absolutely necessary to reconcile. To reconcile between the communities, both the communities have to recognize each other's inner humanity. In order to do so, they have to see their own sins and not just the sins of others. They have to deeply empathize with the other's suffering that has happened in their hands. So, if everyone realizes this, everyone looks back at themselves and tries and see what they are doing, or there is someone who can actually inculcate that feeling of self reflexivity, that feeling of self examination and critical understanding of the situation mixed with self examination, that will be something like an atonement, and that is absolutely necessary for people who are taking up guns, and also for the government to really bring together the conflicting side into an understanding, into rebuilding the sundered human relationship. And this has to be a task that the larger country, the mainstream, needs to undertake. Because people in the Northeast are already getting involved in this side or that side, in this narrative or that narrative. Now, narratives are not going to help. What is going to help us is this concrete ground level peace work that has to be carried out by sensible individuals, by civil society, by victims, even by the perceived aggressors. We have to really bring in a change of heart in the situation, and that is the most difficult thing that needs to be accomplished at this crisis hour.
Absolutely bang on, some sort of a concrete piecework. But how do you, Professor, deal with the ghettoization which has happened? Because if you look at the ground reports, it's like oral histories. Ultimately, what is Mr. Kipgon giving me? It's an oral history. What has Hasina just recorded in this TV? Oral history or oral histories. And what do I get from these oral histories is that administration, intelligentsia, civil society, politicians, they have melted away into ethnic identity. Manipuri identity has melted into the ethnic identity. This is something which I can say is like the balkanization of Manipur that has happened.
And a kind of asking for autonomy on the basis of their cultural rights, on the basis of their status as a minority. Everywhere in the world, minorities enjoy certain special rights, and Constitution of India allows for those special rights. Now we have to seriously examine why special rights for minorities, tribes, and other smaller ethnic groups probably didn't work in the case of Manipur, resulting into a kind of territorial ghettoization. That is an outcome of a long drawn colonial process of separating people from each other by building up artificial boundaries between them and by rigidification of social and cultural boundaries. Now, normatively speaking, legally speaking, much of these boundaries do not have any ethical or legal basis. So we have to bring into picture a discussion on how these boundaries are drawn, to what extent these boundaries are legitimate.
When you say no ethical and legal basis, can you just take us through why did you say that? And how did colonizers achieve that?
Actually, colonizers wanted to mobilize the primordial identities. That is part of their colonial knowledge system. Colonial administration was based on primordial mobilization of identities. All kinds of primordial mobilizations have happened. Now, in the case of Northeast, ethnic identities have a certain kind of authenticity. Kuki-Jo community has a large history. Much of this history is not known to the mainstream, and they are legitimate aborigines of the larger terrain of India's northeast. Like we have almost 222 tribes or languages, tribal languages. Each of these tribes have their own history, legitimacy, their moral authority, their system of administration. Now, what colonizers did, they did some manipulation. They mixed up, they created quarrel between one territory and the other territory. When the post-colonial Indian state came, it was expected that it will be able to maintain administrative boundaries in ethical, legal, political terms. Now, those terms were never settled by way of a dialogue, by way of mutual understanding, and by way of activating a kind of permanent peace process and reconciliation between people who differ with each other. Now, this context remained in the present situation of Manipur, where you know how it started. I don't want to get back to narrative. I want to go forward. And from now on, what needs to be seen, as I was yesterday emphasizing, I've also heard other panelists saying that the safety of the internally displaced people have to be ensured. It is to be ensured that no more violence happens. How people can be refrained from violence? Can there be a buffer zone where people are separated for a while till they are on the table and they have settled for a peace deal? And that peace deal should take into account future possibilities of a sustainable peace with justice. The present kind of structural injustice, you know, the division between the hill and the plains of Manipur, the kind of discriminatory funding pattern, the kind of the claims
Professor,
of,
one thing I would like to know: who decides who is an original inhabitant? Assam was purchased from Burma. Tripura's dynasty came from Myanmar. Who decides who is an outsider and who decides who is an insider?
That is a different question. But as far as the tribal history of the Northeast is concerned, each of the tribe, through their oral history, through their long tradition, had already established their own authenticity. They have myths and stories about how they have originated, the land to which they belong to, and they have created a sense of community. And that sense of community is not in just exclusivist terms. It is in terms of inter-ethnic relationship. It is in terms of mutual self-respect and understanding. So therefore, these finer cultural aspects and historical aspects of the tribes of Manipur is before us. And this really helps us in settling the present conflict situation. But government is not looking at all that. People who make tall claims, they don't look at that history. They are trying to polarize and probably politicize. And it is at this point we really need to generate inner humanity of each other so that conflicts do not perpetuate anymore. We are tired of this bloodshed. The entire Northeast is watching. Now, if this keeps on happening, our entire internal security will be disturbed. The economic development is already taken a backseat. People, those who are in job, they are not able to get back to their job. What will happen to their salary? People who are homeless, they are loitering here and there. They are not given any package, any shelter. So their rehabilitation, relief, their reparation, bringing them back with safety and security in their due places is the prime urgent task at this moment. And these tasks are to be accomplished. It's easier said than done, I know, but we have to outline these pending tasks and we have to take them into task one by one and organize it in a systematic manner so that there is no heart burning, there is no anxiety, there is no sense of disgust, no sense of discrimination, rather a sense of confidence and moral understanding is instilled by way of our peace work. This is what I mean by peace work, and that has to be carried out like Jayaprakash Narayan did in 70s, like Mahatma Gandhi did in Noakhali, like there are these kind of moral leadership that always arose in India. India being a land of great moralists and great religious, spiritual thinkers. We are no dearth of, we have no dearth of such people. They have to be brought into bringing peace in Manipur at this point of time.